Dr. Douglas Dow. I'm the okay. I am the Associate Dean of the Hobson Wildenthal Honors College. I'm a professor of political science, and most significantly for our conversation today, I am the director of UTD's Office of Distinguished Scholarships. So when students at our university are interested in applying for distinguished nationally, internationally well-known and competitive scholarships like the Fulbright, I'm the one that they are working with. I am also the Fulbright program advisor for the University of Texas at Dallas. I'm the one responsible for helping to shepherd all of our Fulbright applications from your application to the Fulbright itself and work with people throughout that process. What I would like to be doing today is presenting a overview of the Fulbright. I have two intended audiences for today. One is going to be for first year, second year juniors who are interested maybe at a later time when they are a senior or maybe a graduate student in applying for a Fulbright and want to know a little bit more about what the Fulbright is, what it does, what it allows you to do. And then I have a second group that I am interested in communicating with, and that is going to be rising seniors or graduate students who are either applying for a Fulbright grant this cycle or are thinking about applying for a Fulbright grant this cycle. So got two different sort of audiences I'm going to be speaking to simultaneously. Um, Going to, sorry, I got a little block here. So, not sure why that's happening. So what I would like to do right now is I'd like to sort of do a presentation. There's going to be a lot of information in the presentation. The Goldwater or the Fulbright has presented me with a slide that I will be using. I'll be going through, and I will stop on different occasions to see if there's any questions, and then I would like for the last 20 or so minutes to be taking questions. And if you can simply use the raise your hand button that Teams provide for you, I'll be able to sort of call on you. I think it's going to work best if all of you just keep your phones muted until you have a question and I call on you. So, all right, let's talk a little bit about the Fulbright program itself. Fulbright program has been around for a long time. It's been around since 1946. It's one of the oldest of the distinguished scholarships that we are working for. The basic purpose of the Fulbright grant is to allow for American students as well as American faculty and scholars to go to foreign countries, as well as to bring students and scholars from foreign countries to the United States, to allow them to spend a full year either in a host country or bringing foreign students and scholars to the United States. And it's really a way of allowing for what the State Department thinks of as citizen-on-citizen cultural or ambassadorial diplomacy. This is a way of the United States to be able to express its students, its engagement with other countries. It is thinking of all Fulbright scholars as informal cultural ambassadors of the United States. And in many of the places that our Fulbright scholars go to, um, the Fulbright grantee herself or himself may be the only American that a lot of people see or interact with. So it's really a form of citizen on citizen cultural ambassadorial potential. And being a cultural ambassador is going to be, as we'll see, one of the key aspects of the Fulbright program. This is a program created and funded through the United States State Department. So this is a governmental program. It is administered by an NGO, the Institute for International Education, that helps run and administer the program in the United States. We talk about the Fulbright, and I talk about the Fulbright as though it's one thing, but in reality, the Fulbright is not one single program. The term the Fulbright really describes a series of over 140 different unique diplomatic relationships that the United States has created with other countries. So each relationship the United States has with another country, each Fulbright commission in a host country has a slightly different relationship with the United States and creates a slightly different grant. One thing, and we'll be talking about this much more, one thing that is important to be thinking about as you begin looking at and learning more about Fulbright is that every single country has its own Fulbright page on the Fulbright website, and they sort of lay out what type of grants they offer, what type of requirements that they insist upon, and what type of opportunities and what type of research or what type of experiences that they do or do not allow. There's not one Fulbright program. There's really 140 different types of Fulbright programs. The goal of the Fulbright is to select some of the brightest, most culturally aware, diverse students within the United States and bring them into foreign countries. The goal is that in the hundreds and hundreds of individuals that receive Fulbright grants, that taken together, they represent a snapshot of the full diversity of the United States. So right up front, the Fulbright really wants to reflect that they are open and encouraging of applicants, regardless of race, color, national origin, sex, age, religion, socioeconomic status, gender identity, sexual orientation. This is a scholarship that is seeking to really recognize the true diversity of our nation itself. First thing to be thinking about when you are thinking about applying for Fulbright is going to be, first of all, am I eligible? That's sort of the first of what I will identify as 4 gateway questions you should be asking yourself. Am I eligible to even be applying for a Fulbright? And there's some basic, not a lot, but some basic conditions of eligibility for applying for the Fulbright. The first and foremost is that you must, by the time that you submit your application to the Fulbright, you must be a United States citizen. That is simply a fact that the Fulbright program is funded by the U.S. Congress. This is a governmental sponsored grant. It's based upon the idea of citizen on citizen cultural diplomacy. And so to be a to be a Fulbright scholar, you need to be a U.S. citizen by the application deadline. It is not open to international students that are matriculated at UTD. It is not open to permanent residents, green card holders. You have to be a U.S. citizen by the application deadline. Application deadline, by the way, for this cycle is going to be Tuesday, October the 13th. We'll talk more about that, but you need to, by October 13th, be a U.S. citizen. I had a situation a couple of years ago where I was working with a UTD student who had applied for citizenship, was in the last stages, applying for the application. She was sure that her citizenship was going to be coming in before the deadline, but there were snags and there were problems, and it was sort of like white knuckle time, and she became a U.S. citizen 6 days before her application was submitted to the Fulbright itself. So just under the wire. Need to be a U.S. citizen. You also need to have a bachelor's degree. So if you have not received a bachelor's degree, you cannot apply for a Fulbright scholarship. One of the things that means is that we are looking at our seniors who, by the time they take up their Fulbright grant in August or September of 2021, they will have already graduated. So we're looking at people who are going to this academic year be graduating. So I work with a lot of our rising seniors. We are also working with graduate students. Most of the research grants that are given out by the Fulbright actually go to graduate students. Graduate students obviously have, by definition, a bachelor's degree. You can apply for a Fulbright if you are a recent graduate or an early career professional. You cannot apply for a Fulbright student grant if you have a doctorate. So if you have a doctorate degree, then you are ineligible to be applying for a Fulbright U.S. student grant. The reason why is that there's another type of a grant called a Fulbright U.S. Scholars Grant, which is for academics to be applying to go and teach for a year in a foreign country. So you have to have a bachelor's degree, but you can't have a doctorate degree. So anywhere between that, you are going to be eligible. There may be country-specific requirements that you need to be looking at that require a certain level of language acquisition. There are some countries in which if you are a dual citizen of the United States and another country, you are not allowed to apply to that country. So there are some countries that have some hard country-specific requirements, but again, you need to look on the country page to make that determination. One other question there that I want to sort of forward here as you're thinking about applying for a Fulbright. First question you should ask is, of course, am I eligible? Do I meet the basic eligibility? And they've laid it out here. The second question that you're going to need to ask is, what is my status in applying for a Fulbright going to be? And there's really two different types of statuses that you can apply as a Fulbright U.S. student applicant. The first is you can apply through your university as a matriculated student. The second category is what they call an at-large category. Now, for most of the people that are listening to me talk today, there's no question as to your status. If you are a matriculated student enrolled either as an undergraduate or a graduate student at the University of Texas at Dallas, then you have no choice. You enroll through your university. One of the first questions you will be asked when you fill out the online application portal will be, what is your university? You're going to be putting University of Texas at Dallas, and you are going to be applying as a matriculated student through through University of Texas at Dallas. Part of what that means is that your application will actually be forwarded to the Fulbright by me. I'm responsible as our Fulbright program advisor to forward it, all completed applications at the time of the deadline from our university to the Fulbright itself. There's another category. It's called an at-large category. If you are a recent graduate, if you are an alumni of a university, if you have, say, been out of school with a bachelor's degree for 2, 3, 4 years, and you really have sort of like lost your connection with your undergraduate institution, but you're not a graduate student, you can apply for at-large, in which you are not affiliated with any university. You are just applying, you're applying yourself. It's usually best for alums, and I don't know if there's any alumni that are in the audience today, but it's usually best for recent alumni to actually apply through their university and get some of the sort of help and advising that universities offer to Fulbright applicants. I regularly work with alum who come seek me out and say, I graduated in 2019, I graduated in 2018, I'm thinking about applying for a Fulbright. I am not enrolled, I am not matriculated at any other school. Can I work with you? Can I work and apply through UTD? And my answer is almost always yes, of course. I'm happy to be working with you. I'm happy for you to be applying rather as a matriculated student rather than at large. The third question that you should ask yourself if you're thinking about whether or not a Fulbright grant is for you is exactly what type of grant am I looking for? The reality is that the Fulbright is not a scholarship program per se. It is really a grant of money that allows you to do a number of different things that the Fulbright sponsors. And I would say probably about 98% of all of the Fulbright grants come into two categories: either a study research grant or an English teaching assistantship grant. Those really are the two major types of grants that the Fulbright sponsors. There are a small number of other types of Fulbrights. There's a National Geographic Fulbright storytelling grant. But for the most part, you're either applying for a study research grant or an English teaching assistantship grant. And the third gateway question that you need to be able to answer before you can begin to apply for the Fulbright is going to be, what type of a grant am I asking for? Now, let me just talk a little bit about each of those grants. First, the study research. A research grant is an application to do research in a host country independently for between 10 and 12 months. You are proposing to be doing field research or archival research or something that requires you to be constantly in the country doing research for almost an entire 12-month year period. Many people apply for research grants that are advanced graduate students doing research for their dissertation. We have actually had here at UTD a number of graduating seniors who, during their time at UTD, had done lab work in the STEMS fields in labs in foreign countries, in Germany or in South Korea, for example, that actually applied for a research grant for the Fulbright to sponsor them to go back to that lab and do research for a full year before they then went on to go get a PhD. So that's what a research grant is. A research grant is a grant where you are doing independent research or working with a PI in a lab. The study grant, which is combined with the research grant, is a little bit different. The Fulbright will sponsor, in many countries, your matriculation as a graduate student in a foreign university. So a study grant is a grant in which you are going to be applying to the Fulbright to win an award to sponsor your time at a university. You have to apply to the university itself, but you can do, for example, a master's degree as a student in a foreign university. Some countries will allow you to be a Fulbright scholar studying as a master's student in any university in the country. Others have university-specific Fulbright programs, but a study grant is different from a research grant. From rather than doing your own independent research, you are really basically asking to matriculate as a U.S. student in a foreign university. I will say, and this is not completely the case, but for undergraduates, for seniors applying, most people in the study research grant are not proposing their own independent research simply because they do not have the type of program or training or research agenda at this stage of your career that's going to make that competitive. We have had one undergraduate win a research grant as a graduating senior in the 14 years that I have been working with our students on the Fulbrights. It is much more common to be applying for a study grant, to be matriculating at a foreign university. The second type of grant, it's a completely different type of grant, is called the ETA, the English Teaching Assistantship. This has become, over the approximately 10 years it's been around, this has actually become the most popular grant. About 55% of grants received to the Fulbright are for ETAs. What is this? An ETA is essentially an opportunity to culturally immerse yourself within the culture of a host country. You go to a host country and you act as an assistant teaching English within an elementary school, a middle school, a high school, within the country. Oftentimes you are placed in towns or villages or cities that are sort of outside of cosmopolitan urban areas. You are not working on your own research. You are not doing your own matriculated study. You're really there getting a cultural immersion experience while teaching English. The vast majority of people that apply for the English Teaching Assistantship, and we've had a fair amount of UTD students apply and win ETAs, most of these people are not intending to go and be English teachers as their career. This is just a wonderful opportunity before you move on to your career or move on to law school or graduate school to have a wonderful opportunity to immerse yourself into a foreign culture at a time when you have the freedom to be doing so, because this is something that most people, as they sort of like develop in their career, they go on and have full-time jobs and things like this. There's just no opportunity to be able to do this. So right out of your undergraduate experience is a great time to be applying for an ETA. Not all countries have ETA programs. approximately 75 to 80 countries have ETA programs, and what you need to do is you need to go onto the country page and determine which countries have ETA programs. What I would like to do right now is I'd like to sort of stop my presentation just for a moment and take questions. I've been talking now for about 20 minutes. I've got to talk about the actual application itself, and there's a lot of detail there, but I'd like to stop and take some questions. So if you've got a question, please just like click onto the raise your hand sign there on the Teams page, and I will call on you. Yes, Matilda.
Hi, I was just wondering, like, what tips you have in like deciding like between like a study grant or an ETA, if those applications are like separate and you can only apply to one. Do you have any other tips on how to decide that, especially like with looking towards like career and like applying to like graduate programs later on?
Good question. The Fulbright will allow you to apply to only one grant type in one country per cycle. So you cannot apply for both a study grant and an ETA within the same year, within the same cycle. So you have to choose one type of grant and one country. And the decision of how to go about that, and we'll be talking more about this when I talk about what makes a good application, but the reality is that in thinking about, do I want to apply for a Fulbright? And if the answer is yes, what type of Fulbright would I want to apply for really requires you as a rising senior to begin thinking about, well, what are some of my post-baccalaureate, post-UTD goals and interests? What is it that I want to do? And how do I go about making that choice? There's no sort of like objective criteria that I can give you. One of the things that I do work with students at a very early stage is, how do you go about making the best choice for yourself? And the one thing I usually say is, everyone that is applying for a Fulbright should be applying for other things as well. Other distinguished scholarships, other post-baccalaureate forms of education, whether it's med school or law school or graduate program or full-time employment. So the Fulbright is part of a broader portfolio of applications that you're going to be applying for as you begin thinking about your post-UTD life. What role within all of these applications, which in many cases you're going to be thinking about different possibilities and seeing what direction you might want to go. What place does the Fulbright have within that broader application? What would I like to do? Those are hard decisions, but those are also really personal decisions that are made by the student themselves. To an extent, I believe that this is a gut call as well. I like to work with students, and I want students who are applying for a Fulbright, both to be very aware of how competitive a Fulbright is, but at the same time to be excited about their application, to really want the particular grant type and program that they have selected, and to begin to define reasons of why they want to be going. So that's where hard work, in which you're thinking about what I've talked to all of you in the Honors College about as your intellectual persona. You're beginning to think about your intellectual persona as you are about to take the steps out of your undergraduate life. But yeah, one grant, one country per cycle per year. Got a hand up from Hetal?
Yes, sir.
Yes, go right ahead.
So please correct me if I'm wrong. Independent study means we are not expected to study at a foreign university?
An independent research grant means that you are independent. Now, what most countries require of an independent research grant is that you have what's called a letter of affiliation. A letter of affiliation basically means that there is somebody in a university or an NGO within the host country that you have contact with and who is saying if the Fulbright applicant gets into trouble, if they have problems, if they need to like use a phone or a copier machine or something like that, that I know that they're in the country, I know what they're doing, and I can help them. That's what's called an affiliation. It's not a matriculation, but a letter of affiliation is often required for these independent research grants. For those students that I'm working with on research grants, I sort of help them figure out who or what institution would be a good candidate for providing a letter of affiliation, and some host countries require letters of affiliation to come from particular universities or a particular type of organization, and that information is on the country page. So you don't need to be matriculated. You are an independent scholar, but the State Department wants to make sure that somebody in country knows who you are, knows what you're doing, and is able to be there to offer you some amount of aid should, over the course of a 10-month research journey, you need such aid. I hope that answers your question.
Yes, sir. And same rules goes with study grant. Yes, right?
No, with a study grant, you don't need a letter of affiliation. You need to get into that university.
Like
So you're not affiliating. I'm sorry?
so that means we are studying at that university, right?
That's correct.
Thank you.
But you still have to apply to that university.
Yes, yes, sir. Yes.
And there is situations, I think they're very, very rare, but there are situations in which you can win a Fulbright grant to be a matriculated student at a particular university, but not get into that university, which means you can't use the Fulbright to get into the university because you didn't get into the university. So being a Fulbright recipient of a study grant doesn't mean you automatically get into the university. You have to then follow up and actually apply to the university. But you don't need a letter of affiliation because you'll actually be a matriculated student at that university.
Thank you, sir.
Matilda, do you have another question, or have you just not put your hand down?
I have another follow-up question.
Okay, one more follow-up, and then I want to get on to the application itself, okay?
Okay. Just when for applying for the study grant, you said to apply to like a specific school. Does that mean that you apply to be like matriculated for a degree-seeking program, or could it be some sort of like exchange, like if we're already fast tracking at UTD?
At that level of detail that you just asked the question, I'd need to look at the country page because each country is going to have different answers to that question. So what the United Kingdom's answer would be could be different from what Taiwan's answer would be.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Okay. I'm going to try to go back to my page here. All right. Award benefits. Primary benefit of a Fulbright grant is that you are being sponsored for your time in the host country by the United United States requires. They pay for your round-trip airfare. They will pay for benefits for accidents and sickness. Under certain circumstances, there's a number of other benefits. There are some countries and some grants in which there is some nominal support if you have a family that would be coming with you. There are some countries and some programs that will actually allow for you to come as a Fulbright scholar the summer before your grant begins to do enhanced language immersion and language training. So there are a number of other possible benefits, but for the most part, what you're getting is you're going to getting a monthly stipend, you're getting airfare to your host country and back. If you are a recipient of a study grant, you are going to be getting the fees of your tuition that are going to be waived. Once you have left the Fulbright program, once you are a Fulbright alum, there are also a number of awards and benefits that come with being a Fulbright scholar. First of all, Fulbrights are one of the most well-known, one of the most prestigious, and one of the most significant scholarship programs in the United States. It is a well-known program. It is something that almost all employers are going to have some recognition with, and you are going to be part of a wide network of Fulbright alumni who have entered all realms of professional life within the United States. You're going to have some networking opportunities. You can be part of the Fulbright Association. And one of the nice things is that for a period of time after coming back to the United States from your year as a Fulbright scholar, you will have non-competitive eligibility status for being hired within the federal government. Not to get too sort of wonky on that, but what that basically means is that for a window of time, you can compete for jobs within the federal government as though you are already an employee of the federal government, which for many types of jobs gives you preference or access. There are some jobs that in the federal government that anyone can apply to. There are some jobs within the federal government that only people that are already employed with the federal government can apply to. If you are a Fulbright alumni, you can have that status. And there are other jobs that give preference to people that have experience as an employee of the federal government. Essentially, because as a Fulbright scholar, you are being sponsored by, you are being paid for by the U.S. government. They consider you to have been in the employment of the federal government. And so that's a really nice opportunity to have this non-competitive eligibility status when you come back to the United States. You may be looking for your first job. There are a lot of people who are interested in the Fulbright who are also interested in a career within the federal government and the State Department, and then many other departments as well. That's a under-publicized benefit of being a Fulbright scholar, but one that I think is absolutely terrific. In terms of your stipend and your grant, you are not necessarily going to be living high on the hog, so to speak, as a Fulbright scholar. But as a Fulbright scholar, you will be able to live a very comfortable life as a student doing research, studying, or teaching English in a foreign country. I have known and talked with many of our UTD alum who I work with who have gone on to be Fulbright scholars, and all of them have been able to be absolutely comfortable within their host country under the stipends they received by the Fulbright, even though how much you receive are going to be different depending upon what country you're in. All right. This is the page where I want to spend some time on. This is the application. The application for a Fulbright. You are ready to start an application, which will be done all online, once you have successfully answered the 4 gateway questions that I've talked about. Am I eligible? What is my status? A matriculated student at UTD or at large? What is the grant type I'm interested in applying for? Study, research, or an ETA? And what country am I applying for? Once you have answers to all 4 of those, you are actually ready to begin the application process. The application has aspects that are required of you. Parts 1 and Parts 2, the basic personal data and program information, and the essays, those are your parts. There are also parts of your online application that will be uploaded and supplied by others. You may need to have a foreign language evaluation done for some programs, not all. You will, regardless of what country or what grant type, you will need to have 3 letters of recommendation that will be uploaded on your application. And if you are applying through the University of Texas at Dallas, you will have to have a campus committee evaluation. I'm going to be talking about that a little bit more, because that is a campus committee evaluation that is quite literally a interview that is done with the university. I arrange every applicant's campus committee evaluation. I am the chair of all of the committees, but we bring in faculty and staff from the university to do an evaluation of all applications. There are 2 major essays for the Fulbright. One is a statement of grant purpose. Basically, it's where you say, what is it that what type of grant do I want? What am I going to do with this grant? How am I prepared for this grant? What is the purpose of this grant? So it's basically where you defend what type of grant you want to be doing with a Fulbright. If you are doing a research project, you have to talk about, well, what is the research? What type of training have I that would lead one to believe that I can do this research myself? And what is it that I need to be doing in country for 10 or 11 months? And there's a lot of detail required of that. For those that are doing study grants, you talk about, well, what's the program? Why is this program an excellent fit for me? What is the reasons why I want to be going into this program? So for the research and the study statement of grant purpose, you've got 2 pages. That's 2 pages, single space, 12-point font. If you're applying for an English teaching assistantship, you've actually only got 1 page, so half the length of the study and research. And in that grant, you are basically answering 3 questions. Why do I want an ETA? Why do I want to be spending a year right out of undergraduate teaching English in the host country? Second question, why would the host country want me as an ETA? What do I bring to the table? What experiences do I have that would lend one to believe that perhaps I, the applicant, would actually be good at teaching English to school children in this foreign country? And then the third question, why the host country? Why do I want to be teaching English in fill in the blank for whichever country that you are that you are interested in? That's 1 page. And I encourage people who are beginning to apply for an English teaching assistantship to think about these as 3 questions, each of them requiring at least 1 paragraph each to answer. And then you have a personal statement, 1 page. A personal statement is really about you, in which you explain who you are, what your longer term goals are, what experiences that you've had primarily as an undergraduate here, or with, if you're a graduate student, as a graduate student at this university, that help to explain and give context to your statement of grant purpose. The statement of grant purpose and personal statements are two different essays, but they really work in tandem with each other, with the personal statement being a statement that helps explain something about the individual who will be applying for the particular grant. It gives context to that grant, but also it gives context to why the applicant believes that they would be an excellent cultural ambassador, an unofficial diplomat, if you will, of the United States in their host country. And a lot of that involves aspect of character, of personality. In addition to the two essays, you have to write a brief abstract, which basically just summarizes the application. You have to talk about your future plans. If I receive a Fulbright, I'm abroad in a foreign country, in a host country for a year, and I come back, what will I be doing when I come back? What are my immediate plans? What does post-Fulbright look like to me? And then you have to have a short essay on host country engagement. What's host country engagement? Host country engagement is basically where you talk about above and beyond doing your research, teaching English, or being a matriculated student at a foreign university. What else are you going to be doing to engage with the broader communities of your host country? If you are an unofficial diplomat, the Fulbright wants you out in the community, out amongst other people, not just sort of holed up in your school or your university. This is really a citizen on citizen form of engagement, and they're wanting you to be engaging more broadly. So that's sort of what you think about when you think about, well, would I want to be doing volunteer work? Would I be engaging in an NGO? Would I be involved in certain types of clubs? What would my engagement beyond doing the purpose of my grant be in the host country? How would I be interacting as an exemplar of the finest of American students when I'm in my host country? You're going to need to have 3 letters of recommendation. Letters of recommendation will be uploaded online. The people that you asked to write for you will be, once you have registered them, will be sent an email from the IIE on behalf of the Fulbright, asking for their letter, and they will be uploading their letter, so it goes on to your online application. I like to think about the 3 references as a portfolio. You want people that can speak to you in detail. You want people that know you well. Having a big title behind your name doesn't matter quite as much as having people that know a lot about you, but these are people that should have supervised you in some way. So you don't want your friends, you don't want, family relations, you want faculty members, or you want people at this university who may have supervised you in different extracurricular activities. You might want to have your supervisor in an internship, or somebody who is your boss at a job. You want people that can speak with you with candor. You want to have letters that all add up to a unified portrait of your intellectual persona, but you also don't necessarily want to have 3 letters that are going to be basically saying the same thing. You're going to need to have a minimum of 1 faculty letter from UTD in your portfolio, maybe 2, but you're probably not going to want 3 because you're not going to be getting sort of the depth of portrait that comes from 3 references if all of the people are all saying, she's a really good student, and you get 3 people saying she's a really good student, but nobody talks about your ability to engage in cross-cultural conversations, for example. You're going to need your transcripts. If you are applying for a research grant, you may need a letter of affiliation, and your host country page will talk more about that. And then you need what's called a campus committee evaluation. Now, what's a campus committee evaluation? The Fulbright, unlike some distinguished scholarships, does not set any limit on how many applications can come out of this university. There are some distinguished scholarships that allow for each university to only have 4 nominations or 6 nominations from within a certain college or university. Fulbright is happy to have as many applications as there are eligible and interested students. So, bring it on is what the Fulbright tells us. We have no limits. Anyone that's eligible and is interested is able to apply. But there's a concession that the Fulbright asks. The concession is this: along with the student's part of their application, their essays, their short answers to their host country engagement and their future plans, besides getting a foreign language evaluation under some circumstances, besides uplifting their official transcripts and getting letters of recommendation, they have to have a campus committee evaluation. Campus committee evaluation is essentially a form that is filled out by the Fulbright program advisor, in that case at UTD, that would be me, based upon an interview that is done at a midpoint between your application process. At a point where you have an application that is sophisticated, you know what you're doing, you've already got well worked out statements of grant purpose and personal statements, but maybe you're not completely done, but you're almost done. You are then ready to have your campus committee evaluation. These are ad hoc. They take about an hour to do. Back pre-COVID, we would do these in the Honors College conference room up in Green Center. We're going to be beginning this week to do our campus committee evaluations for this cycle, and we're doing them all on Teams now, obviously, because we can't be meeting in groups on campus. They're going to involve me as the chair, and I will pick between 1 and 2 other UTD faculty or staff that have experience in scholarships, experience with international education and international scholarship. We ask questions about your application. Well, I've already seen your application. And the questions are for trying to get a sense of your fittedness for the scholarship itself, in terms of your preparedness for your grant purpose, your knowledge of your host country, your ability to act as a cultural ambassador. We ask you questions. And what the Fulbright asks of all campus committees doing evaluations is that they be candid. Our job is not to sell our students, but rather to give an objective evaluation based upon our reading of your application at a fairly sophisticated yet not complete stage, as well as our asking questions. The interview usually lasts about 30 to 40 minutes. And usually what we do at the end of the campus committee evaluation, since it's always done before a student has submitted an application, is I and the other members of the committee will then give feedback on the applicant's application so that they can continue the revision process. So, factors in selection. For the Fulbright, the real question here is one of fittedness. Are you a good fit for your country? Are you a good fit for the particular type of grant that you are seeking? There is really no single idea of what a Fulbright scholar looks like. Part of the goal of the Fulbright is to be bringing forth a deep and wide diversity of students. So what the Fulbright's done is listed a number of different factors, including the quality and feasibility of the proposal, the academic or professional record. I will say, unlike some distinguished scholarships, you do not have to be a straight 4.0 student or a 3.9 student to be competitive for the Fulbright. You need to have a strong academic record, but it doesn't have to be like in the stratosphere like you do for applying for some other of the scholarships. They're looking for character issues. Are you a good diplomat? Are you somebody who is good with other people? Are you willing to introduce yourself to other people and engage with individuals or cultures that are to some degree foreign to you? What is the level of language preparation required for your country, for your grant? And are you prepared for that? That question cannot be answered outside of the particulars of your country and your grant. So there's a number of different qualities that go into this question of fittedness. And to a large degree, it's really up to what type of grant and what type or what country that you are actually applying for. This kind of gives you an overview of the timeline. Back before our COVID restrictions, to be perfectly honest, we were doing most of our campus community evaluations in August and September and even early October. That simply is not possible right now. We are really encouraging people to be applying for the Fulbright scholarship right now. We are already working with some people that are doing their campus community evaluations over the course of the next week or two. The deadline, actually, hold on. Deadlines to remember. This is the last slide, and then I'm going to be taking questions from people. The deadline for students to submit their application online to the Fulbright is Tuesday, the 13th of October at 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, 4 p.m. Central Standard Time, Dallas time. When you submit your application, you are actually not submitting to the Fulbright. If you are applying through our university, you can't submit your application to the Fulbright directly. You are actually submitting it to UTD. You're submitting it to me, and then it is my obligation to submit. Once you have submitted by that deadline, it is my obligation to then submit your application to the IIE, who is actually conducting the selection process for the State Department. The last day that you can, when you submit something, I can always unsubmit it and give it back to you. And that's one way in which I work with students on applications. When they submit it, I suggest revisions and then unsubmit it back to them. The last day that I have the authority to unsubmit an application back to a student is actually a couple days before the deadline. It's Friday, the 9th of October, at again, 5 o'clock Eastern Standard Time. One last application deadline you need to know. If you want to be guaranteed a campus committee evaluation through this university, through my Office of Distinguished Scholarships, you have to have started an application no later than the 24th of August. Everything takes a lot longer to do when you're doing it virtually than in person, and so I need to simply make sure that we are able to meet all of the requirements and expectations that we have. Most universities have deadlines, and our deadline for starting an application will be August the 24th. let me say as a qualification, you can still apply through this university to the Fulbright, even if you start your application after August the 24th. And I will pass your application on. And simply to be guaranteed that you're going to have a campus committee evaluation, you have to have it by the 24th. I will, if you've applied and not had a campus committee evaluation, I will simply upload a campus committee evaluation form saying that you had registered too late to be able to have a CCE on campus, and that will be your campus committee evaluation. You don't necessarily want that, but it allows you to still be applying for the university or for the Fulbright grant itself. Contacts through me, it's going to be best to be using my email. My email is really simple. It is dougdow@utdallas.edu. If you want to arrange a phone conversation with me about the Fulbright, about the process, about the Fulbright, I'm happy to be doing so. I will say that before I arrange a phone call, I'm going to want to know that you have gone through and have answers for all of the 4 gateway questions. Am I eligible? Your answer should be yes. Am I going to have a matriculated at UTD status? My assumption will be the answer will be yes. You should be able to tell me what is the grant type. Is this study research? And if it's a study research, is it study or is it research or is it an ETA? And what country? You should have answers or at least have fairly clearly delineated possibilities of those last 2 questions before you reach out to me. But I'm happy for you to be reaching out to me, dougdow@utdallas.edu. We can arrange a Teams meeting. We can arrange a phone call. What I'd like to do is, and I realize I've gone over just a little bit. Again, if you need to leave, feel free to ghost. But I am, for the next 15 or so minutes, I'm happy to be taking questions. If you can please just hit the raise hand, I will call on people and answer any questions that you may have. Ms. Kavanaugh has been recording this, and it will be posted on the Honors College website and social media. So it will also be available for you if you want to go back and re-listen to any parts of the presentation itself. So I am open for questions. Yes, Sophia.
Hi, thank you. I have 2 questions. The first one is that there is no interview process with Fulbright staff themselves. Is that correct?
Good question. One of the official mottos of the Fulbright is "It depends," and that's a joking motto because there's really 140 plus different types of Fulbrights, and so in order to apply, you have to have a campus committee review. Your application will then go to the Fulbright Commission in the United States, and they make the first cut. Most applications for Fulbright actually don't make the full cut. But those that do and become what they call semifinalists are then passed on to the host countries. And every host country has a Fulbright committee, and they make the final decision. It used to be, just 4 or 5 years ago, that host countries made the decision based upon the application and the application alone, and that you never talk to anyone at the Fulbright. Now, primarily for the ETA program, some countries are wanting to have brief 15-minute phone calls with finalists just to be able to talk to them, to be able to get a sense of their personality through a phone conversation, in some cases to be able to determine their level of language acquisition, if that is in fact required. What countries do this? It changes every year, but there are some countries that do interviews. We had an applicant from UTD this year that applied for and won a English teaching assistantship to the country of Colombia. And when she was a semifinalist, they did arrange to have a call. It was only about 10 minutes long. It wasn't very long, but she did have a phone call that was part of that process. Other countries don't require that. Second question.
Yeah, my second question is, do you have a rough estimate of how many applicants are accepted per cycle?
How many applicants were what?
Accepted per cycle into the program itself?
So again, that depends upon the particular country and the particular grant. If you go to the Fulbright U.S. student webpage, up at the top right-hand corner, you will see a little tab that says Statistics. And you will be able to get statistics for the last couple of cycles on how many applicants for a particular country for an ETA, how many applicants for a particular country for a study grant, and how many received that grant. So because it's grant specific and it's country specific, you're going to need to go on to the statistics tab, but you will be able to get that data. I think it goes back 3 cycles.
Thank you.
You are welcome. And if when you're done, you can put your just click on the hand thing to put your hand down. Matilda.
Sorry, I think that was from the second time I forgot to put down my hand.
Okay, you didn't have any questions. Okay, fine. Other questions? Any other questions?
Someone is asking a question in the chat.
Someone is asking, it seems my hand function isn't working, may I ask my question here? Yes, absolutely. Please type it in. I'm reading things in the chat, and I just opened up the chat box, so I'm reading it as we speak. While Kianush is typing in his question, I'll just say a couple of other things. The Fulbright is a fabulous opportunity. But it is also a fabulous opportunity not just to get a grant that's going to allow you to spend a year in a host country studying at a university, doing research or teaching English to children of that host country. It's also a really great opportunity for you as you think about the application to begin to really define what your longer term goals are and how you have used your time thus far at University of Texas at Dallas to prepare for how you are defining your goals going forward. Would the UK Partnership Award be classified under the study research category? Answer is yes, it would. It is a study grant. I've also seen it referred to as an open award on the site as well. No, an open award is an award that can be applied for research in the country itself. A UK Partnership Award is actually an award to be matriculated at a particular university in which your competition is only those who have applied to that university, particularly even though they may have applied for a completely different field. The open award that you see in the UK is a different type of award. I hope that answers the question. Other questions? Charlie.
That was actually just a misclick. I don't actually have a question. I appreciate all the info, though. It's been very helpful.
Oh, you're very welcome. Other questions? All right. It looks as though there are no other questions that people have. Obviously, if you a half hour from now a question that you have pops in your head, send me an email. I'm happy to be responding to you. It is Doug Dow, DOUGDOW at utdallas.edu. This has been recorded, so we will be making those recordings available. Um, I will make one last opportunity for a call or for a question. I hope this has been helpful for everyone. I know that some of you in the audience are rising seniors thinking very actively, am I going to be applying for a Fulbright this cycle? Or some of you already are applying for a Fulbright and you're sort of getting a broader sense of what the process looks like. Some of you are also first, second, or third years thinking about the future, which is, I think, a great thing to do. Something I certainly encourage. Um, I will be probably once every week or two. I will be doing a workshop featuring a particular type of a scholarship. On Tuesday, the 30th of June, I will be doing a workshop on the Marshall Scholarship, and there will be information that will be sort of spread out on our website and through our email about the Marshall Scholarship website as well. So if you're interested, this will be the first of a series of summertime scholarship workshops that I will be conducting. I want to thank all of you for spending part of your afternoon with me, thinking about, talking about the Fulbrights. Wendy Kavanaugh, I want to give you a special thanks for helping me with the technological side of the workshop. And I will bring this workshop to a close. Thank you all for joining us. Bye, everyone.
Thank you, Dr. Dow.